On today's video, we're looking to answer the question of how to get Klipper on your 3D printer. Usually Raspberry Pis are the answer, but they are priced really high and the availability is really low. Well, in steps the Inovato Quadra. This is an inexpensive Linux-based PC that is more than capable of running Klipper. And what's better, it can run multiple instances of Klipper, meaning I can control 2 different printers using this Inovato Quadra. For the price, that's an amazing deal. So on today's video, we're going to learn how to set up the Inovato Quadra, and we're also going to learn how to set up multiple instances of Klipper. And here we go. Folks, welcome to the channel. I am Leo of Prince Leo 3D. If you are a veteran, you'll notice I have a little bit of different audio quality, some different lighting, always trying to improve. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope this meets your standards. I just want to get my information out there the best audio and visual manner. So things are always improving and I'm trying to bring the best product I can. That being said, let's get Klipper onto our 3D printers. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, Raspberry Pis used to be the go-to option. Whether it was a Raspberry Pi 0, 2, 3, or 4, they were all capable of running Klipper. So most guides and most installation videos use those as an example. However, the recent scarcity has made everyone look in different directions to try and get Klipper onto your 3D printers. And the great thing about Klipper is it lends itself to that. Any device that can run the operating system Linux can run Klipper. So a lot of people have looked to old laptops and old PCs to help. But if you can't afford or find a Pi and you don't have an old laptop, what do? Well, this is the middle ground. This is the Inovato Quadra. I bought this, including shipping, for $50. And as of the publication of this video, these were readily available. The Inovato Quadra is a very small, light-use, Linux-based PC, basically. It has a very light desktop mode. It has a quad-core processor and is running Debian Bullseye 64-bit. And it requires nothing else we need to buy besides the USB cable from printer to Quadra to get it up and running. No SD card is necessary. It comes with the 5-volt charger, and it even comes with an HDMI cord if you want to set up through the desktop mode and plug this into your television. This comes ready to go out of the box. And speaking of box, it's got its own little case. It's kind of cool. It looks maybe like a PlayStation or a PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3. I can't remember which one it was. When I bought it, I expected to try and run it with a single 3D printer, but I found the performance was amazing. I plugged in a second printer, and guess what? It worked just as well. Now, can you run multiple printers on this? It all sort of depends. I'm running an Ender 3 Pro and an Aquila S2. If you're running more complex machines, if you're running dual belts or dual steppers or something like this, you might have to reconsider whether you can run multiple printers on Klipper. It's certainly worth a try, but every scenario and every setup is a little different. That being said, this should likely be more than capable of handling your setup if it is similar to mine. Now, the Quadra has some great benefits. It runs Klipper right out of the box, it's easy installation, and it comes equipped with a charger. We don't have to go ahead and go out there and buy another 5-volt charger for it. There are some quirks or some downsides to it. And the first is the internal Wi-Fi. The internal Wi-Fi that comes with the Quadra is really bad for our application. It cannot keep a serial IP address, which means anytime this turns off or reboots, the IP address will become different. And the IP address is important for us because that's how we access our printer using a web page. I also had an issue with the internal Wi-Fi where every 24 hours or so, it would just turn off or disconnect. It didn't seem to stop ongoing print jobs, which was interesting, but it's certainly not a feature we want. So what are our options if we don't want to use the internal Wi-Fi? Well, let's take a look at what Inovato offers us. There is an Inovato base model, which is $30, and then there's the Pro model, which is an extra $10. They are the exact same machine. The only difference to the Pro model is it also includes a Wi-Fi adapter and a USB hub. And for us, that is paramount. That Wi-Fi adapter gives us the ability to keep a IP address, meaning we'll have a static IP address. When we go to the web page to find our printer, it will always be there. We don't have to worry about pinging our Inovato or finding the IP address after a power down or a reboot. I also had no problems with this losing Wi-Fi every 24 hours or so. It was awesome. So my recommendation, if you're gonna buy this Quadra, go for that Pro model. Now that alone doesn't solve all our issues, it kind of adds a few more. The USB hub, right? The USB hub that comes with that Pro model is going to get plugged into one of the two USB outlets on here. When I plug my USB hub into the Quadra, if I was to plug both of my printers in here, if you're using multiple instances, if I had to firmware restart on one of the printers, the entire USB hub would unseat itself from the Quadra, which meant if I firmware restarted one printer, the other would go down as well. If I have a printer running a 3-hour print and I have to change something in my printer.cfg for the other printer, the second I firmware restart it, it will turn this entire USB hub off. It's a really weird feature. I don't know why it is like that, but the workaround I found was you need to plug one 3D printer into the dedicated USB port on the Quadra, and then you can plug your Wi-Fi adapter and your second 3D printer into the USB hub. Now there is another tiny issue with this USB port here. You'll see it is a little wiggly. Once you get your printers up and running, don't touch this thing. If you try to mess around with this USB hub, it's very possible the USB is going to dangle around in there and it's going to completely unseat and both your printers are going to go down. So it is a little finicky in that regard, but once you get your setup hooked up and in place, you shouldn't have to touch any of this anyway. So that really doesn't become an issue. I was able to print multiple days on 2 printers without having any issues because I'm not messing around with this USB hub the whole time. So those are really the quirks of the system, and I front-loaded the headaches for you, so we found the solutions already. Don't use the internal Wi-Fi, use the Wi-Fi adapter, and don't plug both your 3D printers into the USB hub. Plug one into the hub and one directly into the Quadra. So now let's go ahead and get started with the Quadra. And the first thing we need to do is give it internet, and there are 2 ways to do that. If you have a USB keyboard and mouse, you could plug it into the 2 USB ports, and you can access this as a desktop. The Quadra comes with an HDMI cable. You can plug it into a TV, and then you can access the desktop with your keyboard and your mouse, and you can give it your Wi-Fi credentials like you would any other device. Most all of my keyboards and mouses are wireless, so I had to go about it a different way. I plugged an Ethernet cord into here to give it internet, and then from there, we SSH'd into the Quadra, meaning I wirelessly communicated with this using my PC, and I set up my Wi-Fi internally, and that's what we're going to look at right now. Setting up Wi-Fi using SSH and the Ethernet adapter. We've given our Quadra internet through the Ethernet port. It's powered on, and now we need to wirelessly access it. And we'll be using a program called Putty. It's free to download, and you can find the link in the description. In order to SSH into our Quadra, we need one of 2 things, either the IP address or a .local name. In order to find the IP address, we can use the command prompt, and I'm using a PC, and I can run the line ping Inovato. The response to that will be the Quadra's IP address. I can then take that IP address and use it to SSH into our Quadra. However, there's another way the Quadra can be accessed, and that's through its .local name, and that will be Inovato.local, and we can add that into the address bar in Putty, and it will find our Quadra for us. And the first screen is going to ask for a login ID, and the default one is Quadra, and then a default password, and that is Inovato, and it's spelled 1N0V @T0. So that's every other character being unique. Now, one thing you'll notice right at this terminal screen is the current IP address of the Quadra is right up here to the top right. Now, the first line we're going to run is to change our password, and that line is right here. And all these lines can be found in the description for easy copying and pasting, as well as on my website. I'll have a text-based version of this whole video that you could peruse at your own pace. After you've changed the password, we're going to start configuring our Wi-Fi. And to do that, we enter the line NMTUI, and that will open up the Network Manager. And the option we're looking for here is Activate a Connection. And then this next screen will present us with all the available connections. The wired connection is our Ethernet, USB Wi-Fi is that Wi-Fi adapter that we want to use, and the bottom Wi-Fi section is the internal Wi-Fi. Under the USB Wi-Fi section, find your network, select it, and hit enter. That will then bring up a prompt to enter the password for the Wi-Fi, so enter that now. After entering the password, there should now be an asterisk next to your network name, which means you have a good connection. Now we can go ahead and disable the desktop mode, and to do that, we're going to enter this following command. After that command runs, we can now shut down our Quadra with the following command. You can choose to reboot it if you wish, but I'm going to take this opportunity to unplug it from my Ethernet, move it to my room where my 3D printers are, and then power it from there and make sure the Wi-Fi works. I moved my Quadra and powered it back on. And now I'm going to SSH back into it. And because I don't know the IP address, this time I chose to use the Inovato.local address. Now this time when we log in, we need to use the username root. And the password is going to be just as it was before, 1N0V@T0. Now once we log on, we're going to see we have a new IP address, and that now should be our static IP address. So keep that in mind. We're going to run the network manager command once more. And this time we're going to look to edit a connection. And right here you'll see I have 3 Wi-Fi connections. The Maplewood one is not ours, don't worry about it. But we have 2 Sobini connections. Now, one is my internal and one is my USB adapter. It automatically populates a network connection for your internal Wi-Fi, which we don't want. But what we want to do is make sure the USB adapter boots up at each start. Select the network that has the one next to it and then edit that connection. The first thing we're looking for at the top is the WLAN number. WLAN1 will be your Wi-Fi adapter. So if that's what this says, you're good to go. Scroll down to the bottom of this file and make sure automatically connect and available to all users have X's next to them. Then hit OK. Now I want to go and delete the internal Wi-Fi. We don't want it accidentally connecting through that. So I scroll down to the network ID with no number after it. I select edit and I look for the WLAN number. It should be WLAN0. That's the internal Wi-Fi. Now we want to delete this. So scroll down to the bottom, hit OK. With the internal Wi-Fi selected, move to the right and select the delete option. It'll ask if you want to delete, and you do. So make sure to delete it. Now we'll only be able to connect through our USB adapter, which is exactly what we want because we'll get a static IP address. Now we need to reboot to make sure all these changes take effect, and that is it for the configuration of the Quadra. Next time we log on in SSH, we're going to begin our Klipper installation. The Quadra is now fully set up and capable of running Klipper. We just need to install it. So this is the part of the tutorial where we're going to install multiple instances of Klipper. So if that's what you're here for, then strap in. If you only want to run one instance of Klipper, that's perfectly fine. You can still follow along with this part of the video, except everywhere where we place multiple instances, meaning I put a 2 instead of a 1, you're simply going to use a single instance. So install Klipper, 1 instance, install Moonraker, 1 instance. It'll be a little more clear as we go along, so let's go ahead and get to it. The last command we sent our Quadra was to reboot, so once it's done powering back on, we're going to SSH back into it, and this time I'm going to use that static IP address we saw in the last portion, which for me ended in .17. And this time when we log in, we're going to log in as a regular Quadra user. And now we can begin the installation of Klipper and all the Klipper specific commands. And the first one is to install Git, and that is through the following command. Once that is finished processing, we're then going to issue the following block of command, and that will bring us to the Kia main menu. From here, we're going to choose the number 1 option, install. So type in 1 and then hit enter. And on this next menu, we're going to choose to install Klipper first. So again, type in 1 and hit enter. And we're going to choose to install this with Python 3.x, so that's the second option. And here is our multiple instance part. This is very simple. We change that 1 to a 2. So now we are installing 2 instances of Klipper. It asks us to confirm that, and we do. And then Klipper begins to install. After Klipper is finished installing, you will be brought back to the previous screen. And this time we want to install Moonraker. So type in the number 2 and hit enter. Moonraker will find both instances of Klipper, and it will ask you to also install 2 instances of Moonraker, which is exactly what you want to do. Confirm 2 by hitting enter, and Moonraker begins to install itself. Moonraker has finished installing, and you'll see right above the menu here, Moonraker tells us where we can find our separate instances. Now, they're both going to have the same IP address, but the ports are different. For us, the ports are 7125 and 7126. So later when we navigate to those printer front ends, we're going to enter the same IP address, and then we're going to differentiate them by the ports. Now, in general, the ports are usually 7125, and then they increment up. So this falls right in line with that. The final step in this process is to install your front end, and the options are Fluid and Mainsail. They're so similar that it depends on what you have more familiarity with, and for me that is Fluid, so I'm choosing to install Fluid. I type in number 4 and I hit enter. Once Fluid is finished, you will again be brought back to the main menu, and we are done. Klipper is installed on our Quadra. The other half to this installation would be to flash Klipper onto your 3D printer. I'm not going to go over that in today's video. If you need to do it, it can all be done through this Kia main menu. You would go into the advanced panel, and then you would create your firmware image based on your mainboard, and that would be used to flash Klipper onto the physical mainboard in your 3D printer. So it looks like I'm ready to go. I have my Quadra powered on, my printers are powered on, everything is connected. So now we're going to go into our web page and set up the individual printers through Fluid. I open up a web page and I'm going to input the IP address that we've been using. If you don't remember it, you can open a command prompt and enter ping Inovato and it will respond with the IP address. Now, when this page loads, this is going to be the first port that Moonraker assigned us. That's that 7125 port. And to check that, I can navigate to the right side of the screen, these three dots, and I go down under printers, and right here it gives me the full address. At this point, I'm going to figure out what printer I want to be this port, and for me, I'm just going to choose the Aquila S2. It really doesn't matter. It's completely preference. Now, to continue setting this up, I go into my configuration file, and I need to do some editing to my printer.cfg. First of all, I'm going to upload my own printer configuration file. It's something I already curated, which is something you'll need to do when you first start Fluid. My uploaded configuration file is right here. I'm going to rename it to printer.cfg. And when I save, this takes over as my printer.cfg and the previous one is replaced. Now, if I open this up, I'm looking for the section MCU. And it's right here. And what I'm going to need is the serial address of the printer that's plugged in, which is the Aquila S2. Now, you might have been thinking, why did we plug both printers in at the same time? Well, I want to show you an issue you might run into. To get the serial address, we need to SSH back into our Quadra, and we're going to run the following line. This is the line we always use to get the serial address when we use a single instance of Klipper. Now, you'll notice I'm only getting one response, even though I have two printers plugged in, and that is an issue you can run into. Because both of these main boards are almost identical. One's an Ender 3 Pro, the other's the Aquila S2. They have the same serial address. Now, I need unique serial addresses to be able to communicate to each individual printer. How do we do that? We're going to use a very similar command, but it's going to find the exact path through the USB port. And that command is right here. I execute that, and now you'll see I get two distinct serial addresses. At this point, I unplug the printer I don't want to be using for this port. So I leave my Aquila S2 plugged in because that's what printer I want this to control. I run the same command again, and this time I only get a single serial address. So I know this is the one that's dedicated to the Aquila S2. All I'll do is copy it right from the terminal. And then I'll paste it in right after the serial portion. I save this. And then I firmware restart, and now we should connect without issue. And there we have it. The first of our printers is hooked up. Now, one thing I want to note, when using the bypath command, it is locking your serial address to that specific USB port. So if you move the USB port to a different location, for instance, on the hub, the address will change, and you'll need to run this command again. It's something to keep in mind if you're getting communication issues down the line if you swap USB ports. Now, before I move on, I just want to make a quick change to the theme or the overall layout of this web page. It's going to be easier for me to recognize between the two if I just make a few subtle changes like the theme and the name. So I change the name to the printer it is, and then I'm just going to select a different color. Now I'm going to add my second printer, and I do that using these three vertical dots again in the top right. Right here, we notice the title has changed after I made that change in the theme. And then I click Add Printer. And we add the same IP address, but now we're going to use that second port that we got from Moonraker, which is incrementing it one from the current port. 7125 now becomes 7126. I save it, and this will open my second instance of Klipper. And for me, it's that Ender 3 Pro. So I go into my configuration. I'm going to upload a printer.cfg. Rename it, open it up, and I'm going to scroll down to the MCU section once again. I've plugged the Ender 3 back into the Quadra, so I'm going to run that bypass address, and I get its address, which is right here. It's different from the previous one. Copy that, and then I just paste it right after line that says serial. I save it. Then I'm going to do a firmware restart to make sure those saves take effect, or those changes take effect rather. And we should connect again without issue. And there we have it. Now, just like the first, I am going to make just a really quick addition to this so I can tell the difference. It's actually my pink one. Probably should change the color for the other one, but whatever. And now I have both my printers set up. Now, if I want both web pages open at the same time, I create a new web page. I open up the base IP address, and you'll see they're both the same, but I can go to the top right, click these 3 drop-down buttons, and I can select my other printer. So now I have each printer open in its own web page. And there we have it. We are set up with Klipper. We are running 2 different 3D printers, and they're running really gleefully. Not really the word I would use to describe how a 3D printer runs. First thing I thought of, though. And they are running awesome. Like I said earlier in the video, if I didn't edit it out already, I am also using Triangle Labs USB-based accelerometer, and it is performing very well for me. So far, I'm able to do all my resonance testing using the Quadra and plugging in that USB device. It's a really simple way of doing it, and that video is going to be a little further down the line to make sure everyone gets the same benefits I am. So overall, I've been really loving the Quadra. I've had it now for almost a month, maybe 3 weeks. I've gone through some of the highs, some of the lows, trying to get this thing configured properly. Now the only real downside, and I didn't cover it earlier, is that this doesn't have access to a webcam, at least not that I'm aware of. I tried using a few different ways to get a webcam running using this, the easiest being Crow's Nest, which is an add-on for Fluid or Mainsail, and even that was unable to communicate with the camera, or if it did communicate, I was not able to get any picture. So if you have any success with that, please leave a comment below or email me, message me, join the Discord. I would love to be able to give our 3D printers a camera option, but so far with the Quadra, it doesn't seem like it is available. If you've gotten this far, I really thank you. Leave a comment, a thumbs up. If you want more videos like this, subscribe. I have some more Intro to Klipper videos coming out. I talked about it in my last video, but I'm directly after this going to get a haircut and then starting my BL Touch video. This way, it didn't look like I recorded them on the same exact day. We have a Bamboo Labs video coming up. I have my Kevin, aka Sam, Dual Z belt video coming up. There is so much to do. I have 0 time to do it. So I'm trying to get everyone up to speed with Klipper now that there seems to be some passion behind it. And then I'm going to make sure I get all the videos I've promised out because I have them mostly filmed. It's about finding time to get them properly edited for you. If you want to see text-based versions of this or just articles in general, go to my website. I have a text-based version that comes out alongside every video. And I also have articles that have no videos attached to them that are just getting published there from time to time. I believe my latest article is getting the highest performance you can using the lowest amount of money you can, which generally means an Ender 3 Pro or Voxel Aquila. But there's always new content coming out there that isn't always on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, boys, girls, everyone else, keep on printing.